We're going to move on to the detail panel inside of Camera Raw here, and probably one of the first things that you should know about is that in order to really see what's going on inside of the detail panel, you kind of have to be zoomed into 100% in your photo. All right, you'll see kind of like a little glimpse of what's going on, but honestly, in order to really get a feel for it, you got to zoom into 100%. So I'm just going to come down here, go into 100%. That'll give us a better idea of what we're doing. All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about sharpening. We'll talk about noise reduction in the next video. But basically, you have 4 sliders here. The amount of sharpening is, when you add sharpening to a photo, it's kind of looking at the edges. It's going to find an edge, and it's going to add kind of a bright or a dark outline around that edge, depending on what color it is, to give the appearance that it's sharper. So the amount is just how much of that it does, how much of that brightness or dark contrastiness that it's going to add to your edges here. So you increase that. Generally, somewhere in the vicinity, 60, 70, 80 is going to work pretty good here. You don't want to go too high. It goes up to 150, but once you get over 100, it starts getting pretty bad. So keep it in that range over there. Radius. This is a pretty easy one because I can give you a formula. For most cameras, a radius of about 1.4, 1.5 is going to work really good. All right. Radius basically means when it finds an edge, how far outside of that edge does it go to apply its sharpening? In fact, I'm going to zoom in really far here. So as I start to, let me kind of bounce the radius back and forth. And you should see a little bit of a change. And I encourage you to do this one on your own, is to find an image, open it up, zoom in, bounce that back and forth, and you'll start to see the edge start to get softer or start to get wider. If you ever heard of the halo effect, that's kind of what this is how we can get the halo effect, is if we go too high here, because then you start to get this really wide edge. Okay, so around 1.4 seems to be a pretty good, kind of a good base number that you can just leave it at. Now detail says, okay, so I found an edge to sharpen. I should say it this way. Detail says, how many things do you want me to go look for to sharpen? Because at a very low detail setting, it's only really sharpening the really contrasty stuff. Let me turn the preview off and on here. Before, after. Before, after. You'll really see the sharpening primarily along the edges here. When I start to increase the detail setting, now it's looking for more things to sharpen. So when I choose the before and after here, that's before, that's after. So it's sharpened everything, including things like the sky, because it almost gives it like a textured look, okay? But it's also sharpened a lot of things on the plane as well. Before, after. Now, the last slider here is pretty cool because what it does, it says, okay, so you got these 3 sliders. Let's say that I like all the sliders where they are. The problem that I have is that I've sharpened the sky as well. Okay, I like the sharpening on the plane, which honestly I think it's probably a little bit too crisp right now, but we're just kind of speaking hypothetically here. But we like the sharpening overall, but it's sharpened the sky. It's sharpened a part of the photo we don't want to. Usually the surface areas. We typically don't want, when I say surface areas, like continuous tone areas like a sky or someone's face. What we do is we come over here to masking, and I can now mask that sharpening away from those flat areas. Okay, it happened very gradually, but take a look. See the difference? So now when I do the before and after, you're going to see the sharpening pretty much stays away from the sky but sticks to the plane. Before, after. See, it's just sharpening the edges around here on the plane, and it's staying away from the sky. That's because we masked it away. And you can see it happening if you hold down your Option key on Mac, Alt on PC, and you drag that slider. Remember, you got to be into 100%. But you drag that slider, it's all white. That means everything's being sharpened right now. But if I kind of drag the slider up, and you'll start to see whatever becomes black is where Camera Raw is hiding the sharpening, and it's keeping it wherever it's white. 'Cause remember, it all starts out as white. So wherever it becomes black, that's where we're hiding the sharpening from. So it's only sharpening the areas that remain white. If you hold down Option or Alt when you drag that slider, you get a little bit of a preview when it comes to seeing it. Okay? And then again, before and after. So think of another place where you could use this, a portrait. As you start to increase the amount in the detail sliders on a portrait to sharpen the eyes and the clothes and any jewelry and things like that. Well, you can use the masking slider to hide that sharpening away from the face because we don't want to sharpen the skin. We don't want to give the skin a texture. It kind of turns out just like the sky does. It starts to get that crunchy feel, so we can use that masking slider to hide it away. Now, the thing to remember about sharpening here is that this is kind of like one pass of sharpening. That's why I don't go too much with it. I don't really don't go too far overboard. And I would probably pull some of these sliders back just to give the appearance that, I've kind of sharpened the edges a little bit. And when we start talking about the adjustment brush, we're going to talk about how you can go in and how you can paint sharpening onto a very specific part of the photo, so that rather than here where we're sharpening pretty much everything, we'll be able to go in and we'll be able to paint our sharpening and keep it just where we want it. It's more of a creative sharpening rather than sharpening the whole entire image at this point.